Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome back once again to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, it's so exciting to have you along for this journey. And evidently, I mentioned at some point how much the feedback means to me. I got some very, very special emails from people who talk about how the show just, the chizuk that it gives them and what they gain from it. And what can I tell you? I'm just, a nice little guy sitting here in front of a camera and of extremely ordinary intelligence, background, everything else. And the fact that I have this opportunity to reach so many people in a way that touches their lives, well, it is such a tremendous chus. And I hope that when I'm gone, people speak about this at my shloshim, as I have made clear to my children many times who do not listen to me, but I'm telling them, I don't want any hespedim. Put me in the ground as quickly as possible. I've gotten hespedim my whole life. It's not a problem. It's either hot or it's cold or it's raining. No one wants to hear. Just put me in the ground. Thank you for coming. My kid said, somebody has to speak. I said, I will. I'll record something. Yeah. But otherwise, just move it along, because, make a shloshim. Put out coffee and cake. Let everybody talk. Then they can talk about the highlights. Michael will put out a highlight reel of the best. It'll be very long, obviously, because I don't know how you pick out the best of even one episode. It's so everything is a jewel, is a gem, a diamond. Anyway, but enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me? All right. Sponsorship this week is sponsored by the Hilchos Ben Adam L'Chaveiro online courses. I'm going to read you what he said here because I find this absolutely fascinating, and you'll forgive me if I expand a bit. Yeah. Based on a guy in Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz's Shlita's Kolel Linas Hatzedek Sheets, which is a whole program that he developed to teach Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. The program enables growth-oriented Torah Jews to really understand the principles of Hilchos Ben Adam L'Chaveiro in depth, not, be nice to everybody, yeah? Without these halachas, it's impossible to know them and behave like a Torah Yid. This transformation will allow them to have the shalom bayis at home, which, by the way, is Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. Great relationships with kids, friends, and at work. The program includes a weekly Zoom shiur and direct phone and email access to Rabbi Yonason Geffen, a Talmud Muvak of Rabbi Berkowitz. Separate programs for men and women. Discover what hundreds of B'nai Torah from 6 continents have found in our programs. A little disappointed to hear that no one signed up from Antarctica, but, who knows? Global warming, so we'll have a little community there as well. Men's programs start February 9th. It's coming up. And women's program starts February 15th. So sign up now. Check out the links in the show notes because it's a very, very long email and I'm going to mess it up. So go and check it out for yourself. And go and join and sign up. This is such an important thing. Now, he sent me the outline. I have to tell you, just the outline itself, I find so incredibly intriguing. There's different sections under relationships. Love your neighbor as yourself. Lo sisna, don't hate. Nekama, revenge. Honest dvarim, saying hurtful things. Teichacha, knowing how to tell somebody when they're doing something wrong. All of that's in the relationships. Sheker, falsehood. Midvar sheker tirchak, stay far away from falsehood. Gnevas das, stealing people's thoughts, like pretending, like sending people an invitation when you know that they can't come. Kiruv and Lifnei Iver, the mitzvah of Kiruv Rechokim. What's the status of a Tinik Shenishba, which is an irreligious Jew who just doesn't know anything? Lifnei Iver, doing things that will cause people to do a sin. Messiah Dvar Avera, Machzik Lidvar Avera, which is other variations of that. Kibud, honoring your parents, your friends, Talmidei Chachamim. Chesed, Bika Cholim, Chesed Shel Emes, Levayis Emes, Nicham Avelim, everything that goes with, when someone passes away. Hachnos Kala, Hachnos Orchim, all these kind of different things. When are you allowed to stop learning Torah to do it? All the laws, Tzedakah, Lashon Hara, Hashavas Aveda, life-related sugyas, when you save somebody's life and the laws that are associated with it. Trust me, you don't want to find yourself in that situation and not know what to do. And Hayoshiv Atov, doing things that are honest. The laws of a makeh, which you'd be surprised when it comes up. People don't even realize it comes up. The fence on your roof, it's on your mirpeset. Lo sachmod, not to desire what other people have. It's such an extensive list, and it's things that people need. There are two luchos. One is ben adam l'makom, and one is ben adam l'chavero. And what does Rashi tell us? He says the Doah Mabel was completely destroyed. The Doah Flugger was not. Why? Because the Doah Flugger rebelled against God, and that God didn't have to destroy them. But the Doah Mabel, where they attacked each other, there was no hope. There's no hope. And so these laws are so important. If you have an opportunity to be able to participate, this is something that you should really take advantage of. Okay. We started last week talking about the Mishkan. As I mentioned, these weeks we're dealing with the Mishkan. I want to show you an interesting contradiction, apparently, in Rashi, right at the beginning of Parshas Truma. Yeah? The first psukim tell you, go and collect me the materials that I need in order to be able to build the Mishkan. And it lists gold, silver, copper, shitim wood, avnei shoam, avnei miluim, different types of gems. It lists tchelis argamon and tola ashani, which is different types of dyed wool. Izim, right, which is goat hair. It lists tachash skins. It lists shemen ma'or, which is the oil that you need. It lists the psamim, the spices that you need. It lists dyed ram's hides, and it lists linen. Now, if you've been counting along at home, that's 15 things. And Rashi says these are the 13 things that you need to build the Mishkan. Okay, but I just counted for you. There are 15 things. Where's the missing two in Rashi? So the Mefarshei Rashi give a number of different answers. They say, Tchelis, Argamon, and Talash Shani are all wool. They're just dyed different colors. So all of that is under the category of wool. You don't have to list them separately. Okay. Some people say the Avnei Miluim and the Avnei Shoham don't count those jewels because in the end only the Nesiim brought them and not everybody else. So they're not counted. Other people say the Besamim and the Shemen, the oil and the spices, since that's used to make the Shemen HaMishcha, the oil that's used to anoint the Mishkan, so we're not counting those. All right. But at the end of the day, you got to admit, Rashi didn't have to say anything. The fact that he had to say these 13 things, so we had to sit down and figure out why. So what's going on over there? What's this duality with 15 and 13? And I would like to suggest that the idea of 15 and 13 are ideas that encapsulate the concept of the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash all together. Let us see what we mean by this. There are 15 steps leading up to the Beis HaMikdash. 15 steps. And on those 15 steps, they would sing the 15 Shir HaMalos. 15. 15 being the number that leads up to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, this is obviously not a coincidence that there are 15 steps. We're coming up to Pesach. Dayenu, that fun song that's almost impossible to sing because there are too many words. Yeah, some of them are easy. You have to pick the right ones. Ilu, ilu, hotzianu, hotzianu, mimitzrayim, hotzianu, mimitzrayim, dayenu. Yeah, great. Ilu, he speaks Sarkanu, but midbar bayim shana. Dayenu. Yeah. Some of them are a little harder, but okay. Yeah. If you ever notice this, there are 15 dayenus. And what's the last one? Ilu hechnisanu le'eretz Yisrael v'lo banalonu es beis habachira dayenu. Notice the 15th dayenu is the Beis HaMikdash. Point out as well, there are 15 steps in the Seder. Kadesh, Urachatz, Kapas, Yachatz, right? 15. These 15 are building up. Notice that the 15th step is the Beis HaMikdash. Interesting, right? Now, we've mentioned this in the past, especially when we were giving our series on love, dating, and marriage. We talked about this idea. Everybody knows that Sheva Brachas Vart. Ish has a Yud and Isha has a Hey. Together they spell Hashem's name. When a couple comes together, the Shekhinah is Shayra with them. God's presence rests upon them. Fine. So that's the concept, obviously, of the Yud and the Hey of an Ish and an Isha. The Yud and the Hey together equal 15. Yud is Shemayim. Yud is that little letter that hovers above the line, doesn't touch the line. And Hey is Isha, is this world. Behi bar Behei bar this world was created with the letter Hey. So with Shemayim and Aretz joined together, that's what happens when a man and a woman get married. Shemayim va'aretz, heaven and earth, are joining together. Where does that happen? At the Beis HaMikdash. At the Mishkan. Where Yaakov says, this is the Shar HaShemayim. This is where Shemayim va'aretz come together. As the Balaturim points out, Yaakov says, Ma noira hamakom hazeh. Noira, spelled backwards, is Aron. Where the Aron goes, that's where the Norah comes down. So it's very interesting because it means that the Beis HaMikdash represents this intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, the Gemara in Yuma takes this to conclusion. It says Shlomo Melech decorated the Beis HaMikdash with drawings of couples embracing. My advice is don't try this in your shul, even if they're easygoing. It doesn't go over the same way as it did. But Shlomo Melech, who wrote Shir HaShirim, was trying to explain that there's different ways of reaching HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kirachem of Ahabanim, Ken Terachem Hashem Aleinu. That's what we say, right? Im kibonim, im ka'avadim. You can approach Hashem like a slave or like a child. So a slave has nothing. A slave approaches the master with a sense of fear and awe. And there are people who serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu that way. Years ago, I was in England. I haven't really spoken in a shul in England on a Shabbos many years, but I used to go. There was a period of time, about 30 years ago, I would go for Shabbos, speak in England. And if you find like a real old English shul where it echoes when you walk, boom, 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 The people wear top hats. They make the tefillah for the queen. Yeah, like the real old fashioned, English jewelry. So somebody would always say, "You are in the house of the Lord, 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 Lord. Please maintain the decorum, corum, corum, corum." And it would echo through. There was that sense of like, okay, that's one level. And then it's Kibbunim. Tati, my king. Yeah, you can go and watch the number one podcast that we made with the original Waterbury Boys. The second one is catching up, but that one they'll sing Tati, my king. Yeah, it's Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He's my Tati, Avinu Malkeinu, Tati, my king. Yeah. So it's like a child turning to his father. Yeah, that's a higher level, but not the ideal. The ideal, Shlomo Melech wrote in Shir Hashirim, 2 lovers in an embrace. Now, Baruch Hashem, ArtScroll has made the world safe for English translations. When I was growing up, they had the actual translation. And it made people a little uncomfortable to hear such overt references to men and women, descriptions, etc. But that's because the ultimate relationship is Ish and Isha. And that is where we would go to the Beis HaMikdash. Yud and Hey, that name of God represents Shemayim Va'aretz, man and woman coming together. That's what was in the Beis HaMikdash. The Kli Yakar on Parshas Noach points out that the number that pops up the most is 15. The water was 15 amos above the highest mountains. Every floor of the teva, of the ark, was 150,000 cubic amos, right? Because it was 30 by 50 by 300. So that means that each floor itself was only 10. So it's 50 times 300 times 10. So each floor was 150,000 cubic amos. The water stayed on the earth 150 days, which is just 15 with a zero. And he said the reason is because, as Rashi points out, that they were not true to Ish and Isha. They created mamzerim. They created weird creatures. They did all kinds of strange things. There are those who say, and I'm not getting into the topic, but there are those who say, sometimes you dig up these fossils and it looks like weird crosses between 2 animals. Yeah, because even the animals were crossbreeding. Everything was crossbreeding. There was a breakdown of that relationship between Ish and Isha. Interesting that the Chazal say the Dor Hamabel either could have been the door that was destroyed by the Mabel, or they could have received the Torah. And of course, the Beis HaMikdash is Har Sinai, it's the Torah. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. The Aron with the Torah goes in. That's the source of it. So the Beis HaMikdash could have come from that. If they would have corrected that Yud and Hey, the name of Hashem, that 15, with Shemayim Va'aretz comes together. So of course there are 15 steps going up to the Beis HaMikdash, and of course there are 15 items that go into the building of the Mishkan. And it has to be. So watch the number 13. Picture, if you will. Or as Rod Serling would say, submitted for your approval. Yeah. How were they in the Machne? 3 tribes on the north, 3 tribes on the south, 3 tribes on the east, 3 tribes on the west, and the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan in the middle with Shevet Levi. Because the Mishkan is that number 13. Think for a moment, if you will, of a cube. 6 sides, and the fills it in the middle is the 7th. Pulls it all together, like a Magen Dovid, right? There are 6 points, and the little hexagon in the middle pulls it all together. But there's another way to look at a cube, and that is to count the edges. 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, and 4 on the sides. That's 12. Because where the 6 sides of existence interact, that's what the Shvatim represent. Those are the edges, says the Maharal. So then the number in the middle is not 7, it's 13. It's the point that brings everything back together. That is the power of the Mishkan, the power of the Beis HaMikdash, is to unite us all as one and pull us in as one thing. That's 13. Okay, so I mentioned there are 15 steps in the Seder. Now, how does it end? Echad mi yodeya, echad ani yodeya, echad Elokeinu, 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 sheva shamayim uvaretz. And then we move up to 2, and to 3, and to 4, and to 5, and we keep going back down to 1. Yeah. Shiva yimei Shabbatah, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, Arba Ima Shlosha Vashnei Chosabris, Echad Elokeinu, 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 Sheba Shamayim Uvaretz, right? We keep, no matter how far we go back down to 1. And we keep going till we get to 13. And at 13, we stop. Or Sameach had a publication called the Ornet. I don't know if they still have it, but it was an online sort of weekly Torah magazine. And one year they did a little thing like, why did we stop at 13? Who knows 14? And people wrote in 14. Who knows 15? Who knows 16? Who knows 17? And there are numbers in Judaism for just about everything. It's nothing where you can't assign a number to it. Yeah. Why do we stop at 13? So 13 is interesting. 13 in Gematria adds up to 2 words. One is Echad, which is 1. Right? Dalet is 4, Ches is 8, and Aleph is 1, that's 13. So we go up to 13, which is Echad, and then go back down to Echad, and that brings the Echad. The other one is Ahava, love. Love is also 13, where the 2 come together in love, they become Echad. Echad and Ahava are really the same idea of becoming one. By the way, with Purim coming up, the Gemara says, when you drink wine, nichnas yayin yotza sod. When you drink wine, secrets come out. Why? Because yayin and sod have the same value in gematria. It's not like a little cute thing. Moshe Shapiro explained once concept of gematria. One of the concepts is that we know from the periodic table that elements have an atomic weight. And so when you look at something, you could describe its aspects, its physical characteristics, or you could describe its atomic number. And you can figure it out from both different ways of calculating. So it's something to consider. Gematria is something serious. 13 is Ahava, 13 is Echad. So I wish to suggest that although there are 15 things that go into the making of the Mishkan, because there has to be 15 things, there has to be 15 elements in order to get the Yud and the Hey to create that relationship. But the relationship itself is 13. So that when you look at the building of the Beis HaMikdash, it's 15 elements and 15 steps to get there. But it's in the middle of the 12 Shvatim. It's the 13. It's the Echad. It's the Ahava. It's the purpose of everything that we have. So when we talk about building the Mishkan and we talk about the materials that go into it, none of this is by chance. Everything that we're working with has deep significance. And we have to look at every item. And I mentioned this last time, that the hierarchy begins with gold, silver, and copper. My brother-in-law of Dovid Lichtman was a synagogue rabbi in Calgary, Canada, and they hosted the Winter Olympics when he was there. And so everyone came to shul, was expecting. He's going to, of course, mention it. So he says, well, it's Parshas Truma. What do we start off with? Coal, gold, silver, and copper. I guess you could also say copper as a form of bronze. Yeah. So there's your 3 metals right there. But obviously, if you look at the Torah, how it describes the kalim that go into the Beis HaMikdash, the more holy, the more gold. And so the beams are covered with gold and sitting in silver sockets. When you move out, so they're wrapped in silver and they sit in copper sockets. The kalim inside of the Mishkan, the Aron, the menorah, the shulchan, are all covered in gold, or in the case of the menorah, complete gold. And the Mizbeach HaZahav, and the golden Mizbeach, also covered in gold. When you get outside, you have the Mizbeach, HaChitzot, and you have the kior, the copper basin where they would wash their hands from. Both of those are made out of copper. Because there's a certain intensity as we move closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And make no mistake about it, you can't do it too quickly. There's a process. There has to be a process. When Yaakov Avinu is in the Mokum HaMikdash, he sees a ladder going up to heaven. And the angels are going up and down the ladder. Now, why are malachim going up the ladder? They have wings. It was interesting. There was a story in Old Yerushalayim. I think I told this story some time ago. I don't think it was that recently, but I don't really remember. As I've pointed out many times, when you get old, the first thing to go is your memory. Second thing is, anyway, so I definitely, I think I told this at some point. This guy in Old Yerushalayim passed away, and he had a whole box of ksavim. And he left in his savah that his ksavim should be buried with him. But the family thought maybe Klal Yisrael needs this. So they went to Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, and they asked him. He says, well, let's take out one of the ksavim and read it. We'll decide whether or not, we should publish them or not, in spite of his explicit request to be buried with them. So they read the first one, and the first one was this question. Why were the malachim going up the ladder when they had wings? Why didn't they fly? He says they must have been young angels who hadn't grown their wings yet. So Yosef Chaim said, you can bury him. That's not the reason. The reason is because you can't get up to Shemayim with one jump. You have to go by levels. And so therefore, when the Kohen Gadol wants to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you don't just walk into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There's a whole process you have to follow. And if you mess up a step, machlek is which steps you mess up and where, but you mess up a step, you go back to start. You want to reach into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, there's a process. You can't just jump. It's not the magic of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kedusha is still there in the Har Bayis. And Ba'avosenu HaRabim, We know that there are Yidden who mamish go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, what according to many Mefarshim is the Kodesh HaKadoshim today. In the Dome of the Rock. They come on a tour, they go in, sitting there looking at the rock, which according to many Mefarshim is the Evan Shasiya. And they walk in. They don't have any mystical experience. They're not lifted up out of this world. You have to go through a process. You have to go up rung by rung. There's steps that you need. So the materials that go into the building of the Mishkan tell me first there's a chutzah. First there's a Machna Yisrael. Then there's a Machna Leviah. Then there's the Machna Shechina. Then there's the Mishkan. Then there's a Kodesh. Then there's a Kodesh HaKadoshim. There's a process. The first parak of Seder Taharos in Kalim says, Eser Kedushas Hey. There are 10 levels of Kedusha. The first one is Eretz Yisrael. Second one are cities with walls around them from the time of Yoshua, have a special status. The third one is Yerushalayim. The fourth one is the Har Bayis. And it keeps moving more and more until the 10th one is the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the materials that go into the building of the Mishkan, nothing is by nothing. You take a look at the Ramban in Parshas Bamidbar, where he describes the coverings that went over the Kalim when they were traveling. Why this was made out of Tchelis, this was made out of Argamon, this was made out of Tolah Shani. Each color of each of these wools had particular significance. So when we look at something as apparently mundane as a list of ingredients that go into the making of the Mishkan, make no mistake, these are things that have significance to our lives. And the 15 and the 13 that Rashi mentions, and each one of these objects, and we'll talk about some of them. We're not going to have time to go into everything. Unless we decide to make another series just about the Mishkan in depth. But right now we're working on our Tefillah series. We've received many inquiries. We're probably not going to be up and running until after Pesach. But those of you who are still interested in joining, we have received a lot of response. It looks like it's going to be something very, very special. You can go to the website and express your interest. You can send an email. Whatever it is, we would like to get as many people on board for this as we can. Like I say, this is not a regular podcast that's open to the public. This is going to be a group where we work together. I always say, one of the problems with the podcast is that it's a mira as opposed to dibur, right? I'm speaking, but it's not a relationship. When you give a shir, there's supposed to be someone giving and someone getting. So that's really what I try to shoot for when I give a shir. So we're trying to find a time that will be able to accommodate the maximum amount of people. So please, if you are interested and you haven't responded yet, please respond. And like I say, we're going to work on putting this together. We hope to have it up and running by like I say, after Pesach. That's my goal. And we're going to go mamish through the davening so that the words will have meaning to you. And this is not a public share. This is like the Daf Yomi that I give online and the Mesilas Yesharim. This is a participatory experience. So if you're interested, please let us know. We'd like to see you be a part of that. Okay, so that's our thought on the Mishkan for this week. And we move now to the question and answer segment of our program. Anonymous asks, what do you have to say about a Yeshiva Bachur who doesn't like being around vaping? And it's unfortunately in most yeshivas these days. So let me answer this question by coming around from a different point of view. I was there when my father passed away. He was in the hospital. He died on the Shabbos. I remember when his doctor came to visit, make a shiva call. One of my brothers said, "Would you say it was because of the smoking?" And he said, "Well, he had lung cancer, heart disease, and emphysema. I'm going to have to say yes." My father was born in 1925. He started smoking in the 1930s. Everybody smoked. And think about it. It's incredibly addictive. Incredibly addictive. I did a video once for an organization that was trying to get people to stop smoking. It's online someplace. You could probably see it where I speak about it. But it's terrible. My father tried desperately to stop. I remember my father had bronchitis and he was still smoking. He couldn't stop. He was choking and choking. Yeah. And by the time when he had his massive heart attack and he stopped smoking, by then, unfortunately, the damage had been done, and they eventually found the lung cancer. It's a terrible way to die. I got to say, I don't know what... A good way to die is quietly in your sleep. Yeah. A terrible way to die is gasping for breath. And that's what was happening to my father, because the blood clots were forming in his lungs so quickly that he didn't have a chance to... They couldn't get rid of them, and he drowned. That's how he died in the end. It's a terrible way. And I see people today smoking. I'm not talking about old people who started, years ago when it wasn't so clear. I'm talking about young people where half the pack of cigarettes says, "You will die." Where sometimes they put on pictures of diseased lungs. Remember when I had my heart attack? And they said, "You have diabetes, you're overweight. Luckily, you don't smoke. That's the only thing you got going for you." And it's a terrible thing. Terrible thing. And of course, one of the problems of smoking is the secondhand smoke. In fact, when they answered smoking in the Mir Yeshiva, it's because a guy went to the doctor. He had emphysema, and the doctor said, "You have to stop smoking." He says, "I don't smoke." He says, "You have the lungs of a 2-pack a day smoker." It was just from the secondhand smoke that he was taking in. So it's really serious. So at some point, they came up with vaping, which apparently allows you to have the experience of smoking, but it doesn't release smoke. So there's no secondhand smoke. It's some kind of water vapor. I don't know exactly. If anybody asks me what do I think about people vaping, I say, you have no idea how many chemicals are in that stuff that's going into your lungs. There have been studies. I don't know if any of them are definitive, and it could be we'll find out at some point that it's perfectly fine, and it could be it'll come out at some point that it did serious damage to your lungs. I don't know. To my mind, anytime you're going to be inhaling smoke into your lungs, I can't see how in any way, shape, or form that's a good thing. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not speaking from a scientific point of view. Does it rattle me? Sure it does, because it sure looks like smoking. And for me, it has all the associations of smoking, but I'm not able to go over and tell the person for sure what's going to happen to them. So the people are providing the research for the future for people to decide whether or not this killed you or not. So I hope to God not, but I see where it is disturbing. But unfortunately, when you go through this world, there's a lot of stuff that people do that is upsetting. And if you're not being affected by the secondhand smoke, and you just have to watch people that you care about possibly killing themselves, it's difficult. How do you deal with it? Well, I guess I would sign up for the Hilchas Ben Adam L'Chavero online course to figure out how to deal with people in these situations. But I will say the following: I feel your pain. Anonymous asks, "Why'd you stop teaching in yeshiva?" Oh boy, what a great question. I'll let you know a little secret. I do a number of things very well. I remember some years ago, my mother said to me, "Son, you can do anything." I said, "Mom, I'm too old to believe that. I can do some things better than most people, and some things I can't do at all. But I'm too smart to know that I can do anything." Especially as you get older, you realize that certain things are just, they're not in the cards anymore. I'm coming to grips with the fact that I'm probably never going to be a Major League Baseball player. What can I tell you? You have to make your peace. I'm probably never going to have my own network TV show. That's what I think. You start to come to grips with your limitations. One of the great things about becoming old is that your opportunities start to shrink and your possibilities become less. Yeah. On a simplest level, the types of food that you can still digest become smaller and smaller. I used to go to this hotel and they would have a whole table over here with the salads and dips. They had another table over there with the fish, another table with the main course. And then there was always a table off to the side of the boiled chicken and the boiled vegetables. And I have to say, as the years went by, it looked better and better to me. But I will tell you, one of the things that most people don't know is that I give a great Gemara shir. And I'm talking about teaching people how to learn Gemara. Now, full disclosure, I'm limited. I am limited. I don't know how to teach people who don't know how to read. I'm not good at that. I'm not even good at teaching people how to make a laning. But someone who can basically make a laning and is motivated, I have a very good track record of getting those people to see learning in a whole different light. I was teaching a Gemara shir in one yeshiva. When my father passed away, I took off a year just to learn for myself. And a number of my Talmidim came in a delegation to threaten me that they were going to take me to Beis Din because I'm not teaching Gemara, and how much they gained from my Gemara shir. So that was one. Another time when I was teaching, I had a fellow who was very smart, and he said to me afterwards, he went on to many of the finest yeshivas. He said, "I never had a shir that challenged me as much as your shir." And I'll let you know the secret why. Because the purpose of my shir is to get people to see how smart they are. That's why I need someone who's able to make a laning and who's motivated. Because if a person doesn't prepare, then I can't show them where they made their mistakes and how to correct it. So when a person doesn't prepare and they just walk into shir and assume the position, go ahead. Say anything that you think might interest me. So all I can do now is teach you the Gemara from scratch. And I'm basically an art scroll Gemara. You're not going to learn how to learn that way. But a guy goes to the base medrash and prepares, and then I come in and I show him how smart they are in understanding the Gemara, and understanding Rashi, and understanding Tosfos. And that's all that I ever do, by the way. I always say, I do Gemara, Rashi, and Tosfos. You want to do Rambams, you want to do Rishonim, you want to do a Reb Chaim, go someplace else. I don't do that. I'm not smart enough. Gemara, Rashi, and Tosfos, that's all we do. And we do it pretty well. Yeah. Anyway, in order for this to work, I need a particular group of people who have the right motivation. Where I was teaching, I wasn't getting that student. And so I wasn't accomplishing. Now, I've always tried to be very honest with myself of where I am and what I'm doing. When I started in NCSY in Long Island, there was one paid member. There was no chapters. There were no events. They had gone through 5 regional directors in the past 2 years. The name was worse than nothing. And the one young lady who was a member was because she was on national board and she had to. I should give her a shout out because I think she watches the podcast, Sue Feuerstein. Anyway, so that was it. That was my entire region. There was one person. So I had to start from scratch. And I went to learn the business, and figure it out, and created programs and publications and all kinds of amazing things. And I did this for 9 years. At the end, I said, I'm not being mechadesh anything. I'm just maintaining. I don't have to stay here to maintain it. And I left at the top of my game, Baruch Hashem. And people were very surprised because they said, you have a very successful organization, you're making a good salary, you have everything. Why would you leave it? And I said, because it's time to move on to whatever my next challenge is. And every job that I got basically came my way. I never went out to look for it. So when I left the last place that I was teaching, I was waiting for the next offer to come along. That was 8 years ago, 7 years ago. It never came. And one of the reasons that people say to me that I cannot understand, but it's clearly true, is that people are intimidated by me. They're afraid I'm going to come in and take over the yeshiva. In fact, there was one yeshiva where somebody told me that they were considering to bring me in, and it was the kind of yeshiva where I could be effective. And it was on a higher level than where I had been teaching. And all the Rebbeim were very excited about it, except for one guy who was not happy about it. And he basically vetoed it. So my friend asked him, he says, why? What's the problem with Orlofsky? He says, I'm the one who's close with the guys. He comes in, so then the guys will all go to him. Now, I can't even understand this. Rabbi Orlofsky, who I had the schus of working for years, he was on the podcast, and Mr. Hashem will have him again. But he said once, he says, people would ask me, why do you have Orlofsky? Aren't you nervous having, somebody that talented on staff? And he says, why? My yeshiva can only be better if I hire the most talented people. Why wouldn't I want someone who's more talented? I agree. There are things that I can't do, and I'm thrilled to see other people who can do it. Why would I feel like I want to keep it for myself? So the answer is that I basically stopped teaching where I was because I was not doing something that I felt was worthwhile at that point, and I was waiting for the next option, and it never came along. I became a speaker, traveling around basically just to make a living. I didn't have anything else, but my dream has always been to open a yeshiva and to give a Gemara shir and to build Talmidim, as Anshei said. And Teishes Yontif explains, stand them on their feet, make them mention, so that they'll be B'nai Torah, not just teach them Torah. I can't tell you how it frustrates me when I see people come in who walk into a shir to show the Talmidim how smart they are. I don't want to show them how smart I am. I want to show them how smart they are. Anyway, that's a long answer to a short question. One more. Anonymous asks, I have children with ADHD and learning disabilities and look for ways to inspire them to grow even though they are in school, which makes this challenging. And Rabbi Orlofsky explained how he has managed to become so learned and committed in spite of, or perhaps because of, similar challenges. Yeah. First of all, life's not fair, right? Obviously. My wife has always been convinced that people who are tall and thin have a higher quality of life. We made a Yeshiva Bachur once for one of her friends who was tall and thin, and I mentioned this. And another one of her friends who was also tall and thin and was divorced came over to me and said, it's not always true. But it is perception. Most people don't go in life and say, gee, I wish I could be short and fat. But that's the roll of the dice. Some people got good genes, people got bad genes. Some people are going to be tall, and some people are going to be short, and some are going to have a tendency towards obesity, and other people are going to have other illnesses, and other people are going to be physically strong, and other people are going to be weak, and other people are going to have great minds, and other people are going to have terrible abilities to be able to retain information or to chop or to understand things. It's never fair. But for the most part, there's a balance. And so a person is a combination of advantages and disadvantages. So in my case, I have basically every learning disability that they know. I have ADD, and I have dyslexia, and I have focusing problems and retention problems, and I forgot all of them. There's so every time they come up with a new one, they test me, and I have it. Yeah, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu made me very smart and very quick, and so what I would do is get somebody else to read, and then I would manipulate the information so that it could make sense. That was the gift that I used to compensate for it. But I ended up growing to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. I already had smicha and I couldn't read. So I went around to a number of people who I admire in learning. Not just because they're smart, but they're mesudar, they're put together. And I asked them, and it's interesting, all three of them gave me the same answer. They said, you have to learn 100 daf Gemara over and over and over again until you know it. They all told me the same thing. So I took off 6 months, and I sat in the Beis Medrash, either by myself or with a chavrusa who was basically a goylem to keep me company. And I would read. I want you to appreciate how hard this was for me. I had to get all the way down to the halfway down the Amud and translate it. And sometimes I had to sit there and look up every single word, make sure I understood it, put it together, make sure it made sense. And then I forgot what I learned. I had to start again, go over it again, and go over it again. And I kept doing this until I got it down, and then I moved down to the second half of the Amud. And then I chazed over the Amud a few times. I turned the page. I did the next one on the next one. One by one, one by one. They told me to do it with Gemara and Rashi, but I can't learn without Tosfos, yeah? So I killed myself. There was one time when I would write the whole thing over, the Gemara and the Rashi and the Tosfos, just to make sure that I understood it. It was grueling, and I could not have done this at an earlier time in my life. Because the confidence necessary to bang your head against the wall until you break either your head or the wall takes a tremendous amount of confidence. But now I was married and I had kids. I'd run NCSY for 9 years. I had smicha. I was considered somebody. I had the confidence to face this terrible, difficult situation. After 40 daf of Gemara, I saw a major change. After 60, I had it beat. Now, I will never be my wife. You know, when you have one of those 4-page alshechs, my wife goes like this. Okay, he's saying like this. I'll never do that. But I give a daf yomi every day. I have to prepare a daf Gemara on my own every single day and work on it. I'm able to do it. I have the skills. So what you do not want to do is set them up for failure. Now, I have to say, somebody said to me once, when I told this story over, they said, you had ADD? This guy's a Rosh Kollel. Said, you had ADD? Count your blessings. I had ADHD. He says, the kids with ADD, they just stick in the back of the classroom and they go, I don't hurt anybody. But the ADHD kids are bouncing in their seat and running around and going crazy. And he says, we were the ones who got beaten, he says. So what you have to do is say, school is one aspect of your life. You have to find areas in their life where they can be more successful with whatever talents they have. I don't know if that means music. I don't know if that means art. I don't know if that means karate. I don't know if that means gymnastics. Whatever it is, you have to give them things that they are going to be successful at, because they have disabilities that are making it difficult for them. So they have to count their successes. If you can find a school that works with you, matova manoyim. Unfortunately, I heard Rabbi Orlofsky say this once. He says, I said it myself, but then I heard it from Rav Matasyahu Solomon. A school system is an artificial environment. Shimon ben Shetach started a school system because the regular system of learning at home wasn't working with your parents. He says, but everything artificial has side effects. Going back to the vaping question. So it's a problem. It's a problem. If you can find a school that can understand the kid's limitations and help him work around them, it's unbelievable. It'll be the greatest thing in the world. And if not, then you have to tell your kids school is not the end all of life. It's a means to an end, and that end is to be able to become an Oved Hashem and to be able to be successful. And not everybody's going to be successful in every atmosphere and in every, institution. And that's okay. Okay, that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show or leave a comment, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sign up for the ongoing Mesilas Yesharim series. I know there are people who are hesitant to join because we already started. It's not a problem. When new people join, I sum up what we've done so far, and every shir stands by itself as a incalculable gem. And if you say, gee, why should I bother getting this diamond when I've missed all the other diamonds? Because every diamond is so precious. Daf Yomi, what am I talking about? Gosh, we're almost done with Moed Katan. We're going to be starting Chagiga, and then we're going to be starting Nashim. You can jump in at any time. Dapim keep going. Yeah, you can get on the bus at any stop. And if you want to sign up for the Tefillah series, you have that opportunity. If you want to sponsor a episode, we still have some sponsorships available coming up. You sponsor an episode. I'll be talking more about my upcoming trip to America soon. If anybody wants to see me in person, I was going to say live, but at least in person. Let you know about that. Okay, that's it for this week. This is David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
I can't believe this thing is still going on.